Lesson on that. Those of you that know me rather well know I'm not particularly a high-tech kind of person. But anyway, yes, Ryan told me I had 5 minutes and asked if I could meet that challenge. And those of you that also know me, you know that's probably going to be definitely a challenge to do that. But one of the reasons that I think it will be a challenge is that we have some good positive things to say about what is happening in our community, and particularly what is happening in our downtown. One of the things I would like to do as a preface to what I'll be presenting to you here momentarily is to echo something that hopefully you saw as a theme of what Catherine presented. And I had the opportunity to be one of the group that met with Catherine, and they're certainly a very good, august group that came and had a lot of good recommendations, a lot of good ideas for what we can do. One of the things that I think was an outgrowth of that meeting was certainly the fact that we do have a lot of historic fabric in this community. We have a lot of history in this community, and we have a lot to build upon. Oftentimes, the people that don't really recognize what a community has are the people that live in that community. I don't know, Catherine, if you would agree with that. Just something we see every day. We get accustomed to it, and we don't recognize the attributes that we really have in our own community. And that's one of the things that's very important that we need to do. The other thing, hopefully, that you did get out of Catherine's presentation was the fact that this is not an undertaking that will be accomplished by one particular group. If you had an opportunity to really listen to what she said, how many different organizations, how many different individuals will have to be involved in bringing our downtown back? And that's one of the things that I hope you will leave here with, that message that we all have a role to play, whether you're a business owner, whether you are just a private citizen, whether you're a member of the chamber, whatever the case may be. No one institution, no one group is going to accomplish this. We all have a role to play. Hopefully we can convey that message here just momentarily. North Oak enhancement. One of the things that Ryan touched on, and I think he'll give you more detail here in just a few minutes, is that as an outgrowth of the Envision Mineral Wells process, there was a community redevelopment council, I believe we call them, that was developed, and there was a downtown component to that. And that group began to meet this fall, correct me if I'm wrong, Ryan. And one of the first meetings that that group had, I was able to attend that meeting and have had the opportunity to attend most of the meetings. And one of the things that the group wanted to do was to engage in some type of project, some type of activities that we could begin to move forward something in the downtown area. So one of the things that I asked the group was, well, about 15 years ago, if you can imagine this, we actually had a very broad, generalized downtown redevelopment plan developed with the city. The council gave us some funds to do that. And we've had that plan in place for about 15 years. The unfortunate fact of the matter is that somewhat akin to what Catherine was saying is that it takes resources, and it also takes people interested in doing something to get a plan like that moving forward. And with that downtown group that began meeting in the autumn of last year, they said, yes, we'd like to take a look at that plan. Would you bring that back to us, and let's see what we might think of that plan, and it might be something we might want to move forward with. So at the next meeting, we did bring that plan before the group. Now this is a portion of the plan here. And what we are focusing on is, if you have an opportunity to look at that, you probably have a better shot of that than I do. But what we basically had, the central focus of this plan was basically a streetscape plan for North Oak. Now the overall plan actually encompassed a much larger area from the depot area all the way up past the Crazy Water Hotel and about 3 or 4 blocks on either side of Oak. But what we were focusing on was the possibility of a streetscape plan to improve the appearance of North and South Oak. And as you can see there, what the streetscape plan entails is basically dealing with the materials on the street, with the things that you encounter, the physical elements that you encounter as you either drive down the street or as a pedestrian as you're walking down that street. It's a little bit difficult to see this, but basically what we're talking about are some design elements, some street materials that you look at that are more decorative in scope than what you currently have in place right now, as well as doing some landscaping at the intersections and the like. So we presented this plan to the group and said, well, we have some really basic information that has already been presented, already been prepared, and if this group is interested in moving forward with a plan similar to this, we can do so. So the group felt like this might be a good start for us because this was already something that we had the basic skeleton of, or the basic framework for. And so we began to work with that. We went back to our engineering and landscape architect consultant that prepared the basic plan for us and said, could you give us some updated cost estimates for this? And they said they would. And so we began to look at this in greater detail, and I think we were beginning to generate some more interest among the group in this plan. One of the things that we began to realize is that the overall plan, again, if you go from roughly the Crazy Water Hotel and you begin to include all of the elements of this plan, which also included signage and the like, as well as landscaping and alternative types of materials within the street section itself. But this is probably about $1.5 million to $2 million plan if you were to carry it out and fully execute the plan in its final analysis. Obviously, we didn't have $2 million to work with, so we began to look at the possibility of, well, can we phase this plan? And what you see in front of you is really the first phase of this plan that really concentrates on the area where we have the two one-ways, the one-way pair of 180, where it intersects North Oak and South Oak 281, to make these kinds of improvements in that particular area. So we began to look at that, and we determined that it was going to cost somewhere in the range of $600,000 just to do that particular area and make those improvements in that area. That's really more money than we had as well, but one thing that I don't think Catherine mentioned was that Texas Department of Agriculture has a downtown redevelopment grant program. So we looked at the possibility of applying for grant funds. You can get up to, I believe, $250,000 for each individual project. You have to match that, I believe, at least at 25%. They like to see you overmatch if possible. But even at that, we felt like we could probably come up with $350,000 for a total project. Unfortunately, the overall project, even in its first phase, far eclipsed that. So that really wasn't an avenue for us to proceed with. But we have had some communication with Texas Department of Transportation for their enhancement program, where they get federal dollars to enhance rights of ways on U.S. highways. So we took this project with the idea that it was probably going to cost anywhere around $500,000 to $600,000, and went to Texas Department of Transportation and met with them. To our good fortune, what we found out was that the Fort Worth District has around $5 million that they have allocated for this fiscal year and next fiscal year that they wanted to utilize in their rural counties to do some enhancement projects. And this project fit perfectly. So at the present time, we're working on this project with the Texas Department of Transportation, and we hope to have an agreement, a funding agreement with them to do this project, possibly even starting construction as early as this fall. But certainly we want to get an agreement executed with TxDOT as quickly as possible, and then proceed with the engineering and go from there. This is just a detail of the kind of things you can do in the intersections. We haven't finalized. Again, this is a concept plan. We haven't finalized exactly what can be done, but as you can see, there are landscape elements to it. There are brick pavers. We're not going to be allowed to put any brick pavers in the pavement section or the street section. TxDOT doesn't like to work with brick because it's very difficult to maintain, and also it doesn't have good traction properties to it. And if you've ever driven down Camp Bowie on a rainy day and tried to stop, it's not the best thing in the world. But we will probably end up with some type of etched concrete surface, something decorative, something that will be very appealing and very attractive. And then as you see behind the curves there will be landscape elements. That's where you'll see the brick pavers and that sort of thing. What you see before you right now is actually kind of an interesting process. They can actually do stamped and stained asphalt. Now we probably won't do that. Again, it'll probably be etched concrete out in the actual pavement section of the project itself. That'll give you some kind of a general idea. Again, this is the basic area that we're going to be working with. One of the aspects of this plan also, and of course we'll have to work with the county and some other folks, if you look at the upper portion, in the middle upper portion of the plan depicted there, you'll see that there is a pedestrian linkage between Northwest 1st Avenue and Oak on Northwest 1st Street. That's an opportunity that may exist that we want to continue to pursue and evaluate further to connect. Part of the problem we have, and I think Catherine spoke to this, part of the problem we have is we have a major highway that basically divides our downtown into two areas. Obviously, if you can work with a square where you have a public setting, that's the absolute best circumstance to work with when you're working with a downtown. We don't have that. We have obviously some challenges. What we're going to need to do is provide pedestrian nodes, areas where we can connect the activity areas with parking areas and so forth. So what you see there is just a concept on how we could accomplish that. Connecting the parking that's behind the structures there on Oak and getting people from those parking areas safely and in a very, very nice setting to the storefronts that we find on North and South Oak. So that's a project that we are in the process of moving forward with. Again, hopefully in the next 60 to 90 days, we will have a contract in front of the City Council to move forward with this project for our downtown area, Phase 1. The overall project, as we will likely conclude the project, will be in the range of $700,000. The city's share of that project is to provide the engineering. That will be our requirement. That'll be about an $80,000 estimated cost, we believe, and that will be paid for out of what are called tax increment financing funds. It won't be paid for out of the general fund. Back in 2008, the city set up a tax increment district in our downtown area, and so our matching share, which will essentially be the engineering, we think again in the range of $80,000, will be paid with tax increment financing funds generated out of our downtown area, so that will not be something that will hit our general fund, which is the taxpayer funded area of our budget. So we're very excited about this project moving forward, and hopefully we will have something in front of the community within the next, like I say, 90 days. We're hopeful of that happening. We don't have the absolute commitment yet, but the Fort Worth District Office of TxDOT has said they are interested in that. They are finalizing their estimates, and we feel very confident that we'll move forward with that project in the near term. One of the things that you will see, the way this is handled, is that we will do the engineering. We end up in that process turning over engineering plans to TxDOT, and they actually bid the project out, execute the project, inspect the project, and handle the project on our behalf. So it's really a pretty seamless process for the local governments that are involved in those kinds of projects. But this is a very exciting project, and I think this really does get us started off on the right foot to really beautify and improve our downtown. What you see in front of you there, a historic resources survey. Some of you may have seen something in the newspaper about that of late. What we are doing, based on recommendations from the Texas Historical Commission, is that we have entered into a contract with a consulting firm out of Austin to do a historical resources survey in our downtown area. Well, why would you do one of those? The reason that you want to do that, and why do we need it, is this. Ultimately, a historic resources survey, and we have about 1,100 parcels in the downtown area that will be examined as a part of this survey. The consultants will come in and examine what we have in our downtown area, the opportunities we have, the historic structures that we have, maybe some even historic sites that don't have structures on them at the present time. But the reason that you do this is that this allows us to move forward with ultimately a historic preservation district in our downtown area. Catherine mentioned something akin to that earlier in our discussion. It allows us to establish possibly a historic register, or excuse me, a national register district, and also really puts us on the forefront with the Texas Historical Commission as well. So this historic resources survey in our downtown area is really the first step in moving forward with establishing some of these other ordinances that will guide development redevelopment and revitalization in our downtown area, and will also protect the historic assets and resources that we have in our downtown area that Catherine mentioned that we have a wealth of, that we probably don't really realize the magnitude of the history that we have in our downtown area. So we have executed or are in the process of finalizing that contract. That will be started probably in the next 30 days. There will be a public meeting that we'll have with the consultant that the public can come to kind of get an idea of exactly how this will be executed and carried out. And we would invite the public to come to that meeting so you'll have an understanding of how that will be done. So essentially those are some of the things that we have in progress right now. We're very excited about it. I don't know, Ryan, hopefully it was within the time frame you've allotted me. If anybody has any questions, I'll stay around after the meeting and be happy to answer any questions you might have.